Hey everyone, and welcome back to Going Google, a series on leveraging Google Apps, now called G Suite applications, uh, to the best of your ability so that you can automate several processes and have more time in the field or connecting with customers or clients. It's been a while since I've done a video about automating forms, and I've learned several things since I've done that whole tutorial, so I thought I would provide a major update to this tutorial. I would say that I'm going to be skipping several steps in this video, so if you haven't watched that previous video, please go back and watch that because that would provide a real strong basis about for what I'm about to cover. Additionally, if you're really unfamiliar with Google Apps and the G Suite offerings, then I definitely recommend that you check out my other video about leveraging Google Apps and all the different ways that you can leverage and how to get connected with G Suite and how to get signed up for that. Okay, but in today's video, I really want to focus on not only automating forms, but adding in automating a calendar invite and how to link step by step from start to finish from a client being interested to a complete event being finished within your organization. So in this case, I'm going to use team building as a catalyst for this conversation. And so in our organization, we have a generic email account, and all too often we get an email that very much like this that says, "Hey, I'm interested in team building for my organization. Can you tell me more about it?" And then how many of you go ahead and hit reply and start typing out a response of what you have to offer, and you want to connect with that client or you want to call them immediately and have a conversation? While that might be one style of approach, I highly recommend you waiting a little bit longer to connect and have that personalized conversation with that client after you've gained additional information. That's good for two reasons. One, you've gotten additional information from them, you've gauged their interest in that process, and then two, you've weeded out people that really aren't that interested in what you have to offer. And when you do have that conversation with them, it's an informed conversation on their end. And I'll explain that here in just a second. So we get an email like this all the time. I have several users that have access to this email account on our behalf. And one of the issues we were running into is they were sending responses, and while they might have been quality responses, they were unique responses. And the consistency and our approach to contacting customers was lacking. So we built into this, or we checked into this canned responses. I'm not going to do too much on this tutorial about canned responses, but if you haven't learned about it, there's a lot of other tutorials out there on that. Definitely recommend checking out. It used to be called Google Guru video series, and now I think it's called something Monitor. I can't remember off the top of my head, but those guys have created a great number of video tutorials on various tips and tricks within G Suite. Canned responses was one of the best things I learned. So you can see here that consistent response to our client. Excuse me. And you can see one of the big things that we want our clients to learn about is our primer for the services and programs that we offer. What this does is it gives them in-depth information about the different things that we offer, the ideal time frames, and what you can accomplish within those time frames. It's a lot of information, and it's really, in my opinion, too much information for a website. So I think Google Doc fits us very well for this purpose, and we can update this. And the great thing about being able to update this is it can go out live. We can type in real-time updates to this document, and it goes out, and everyone is always looking at the most up-to-date version of this. Okay, so you can see here the first step was an email or a call into our organization. We sent them a canned response that sent them this primer for more information. And now we ask them as a next step to gauge their interest and really more information from them. We have them fill out a general interest form. So this general interest form collects additional contact information and gets to know a little bit more about the organization. And on page 2, it asks them about the activities or programs that they're interested in. This is a pretty generic automated form for outdoor adventure. So for our organization, when somebody submits this form, it sends the client an email that says, hey, thank you very much for your responses. We've got your information, and we'll be following up within a couple business days. On the organizational side, it goes back to our organizational email address, and it says, hey, this client is really interested. Please follow up with them. Here's the information. So from there, this is where we can have a more informed and more efficient conversation with that client. And hopefully the client feels like, wow, that we're really paying attention to their needs because, well, we know more about them and what they're really trying to accomplish and what they're really interested in, whether they just want rock climbing or they want watercraft activities. We know that information on the front end. And so we can have done the research and then talk about, and then when we call them and we pick up the phone to have that personalized conversation, we're well informed and they're well informed. Automating that form and how to do that is available in one of my previous YouTube tutorials. Okay, so then let's talk about the next step. We had that conversation with the client, and now we just got off the phone with them, and we told them we would run them up an estimate based upon our conversation. This is the next behemoth within our organization. This really takes a client from generally interested to, okay, these are the specific things that we're interested in, to getting them actually reserved and on the books tentatively for an event within our organization. And so you can see that we collect some of the same information, and the duplication there is for a specific reason. While I could use Google Spreadsheets, a feature within Google Spreadsheets, to link one client's information in that first general interest form to the next spreadsheet with this estimate, link those two things together. I don't want to do that in this case because I actually use the duplicated information in other documents for our automation process, and it allows some of our staff members to gain access to that information without having to gain access to the spreadsheets. Okay, so that's why I'm duplicated. Long story short, that's why we're duplicating some of the same questions. Now, to get to the event date, this is where we start building in that calendar feature. And believe me, this took me a long time, but in the end, it's actually very simple. I just wish somebody would have walked me through it like I'm about to. So the questions that we ask, it's important to ask them and have them formatted with the date and time format, and they need to be separate. Now, there is a way that you can ask an open-ended question that just says date information or event information, and then it uses that quick add feature within Google Calendar. If you're unfamiliar with it, check it out. It's a great thing to add things to your calendar on the fly without a lot of information. Without a lot of time. But this instance, the way we have this form built, we actually want it to be separated like this. And it's really important that the questions are formatted like this. Otherwise, the calendar invite will not work like it's expected to. Okay, so you fill out expected participants, final count deadline, more information about the program itself, and then we get down into cost, total cost, and then the group coordinator, who's in charge of this particular event. And then, excuse me, this is new for me. I haven't seen this too often, but I'm guessing it's because I'm actually using this form as a generic user and not someone that's signed in to a domain. But this CAPTCHA, which is really easy to do, all you have to do is click the box and you should be good to go. It's just making sure that people are not spamming you. So it's a really simple thing. Okay, so somebody fills that out. And here's the great thing about it is it will automatically send the email to the appropriate client, giving them a summary of the estimate that we just talked about. It also gives them a summary of the next steps that they need to complete. Again, connecting them and the next steps within the program development, as well as connecting this information with relevant parties on campus. So let's say you need to include an administrative assistant so that they can add it to their calendar, or if you didn't already include them on the original calendar invite, or you need to include another department on campus. So this is a prime example. We need another department in our organization to be aware of this event, and so we copy them on this email so that they know that this is coming. Excuse me. Okay, so it gives them that generic information, the next steps that they need to do. And again, one of the major next steps that we need them to do is fill out an organizational information form. This really goes from we didn't know anything about your organization to we're a well-informed entity, knowing who you are, what your mission is, and what your values are, what the hierarchy of your organization looks like. And we use that information from that generic form to really build a quality event for our client. So automated. All of this information is already typed out. I'm not having to repeat anything. It's just all there. I think the big update here would be that I am using formatting within the email now, using heading formats, using links, and having separate lines. It looks like a generic HTML email with actually quite a bit of code or script on the back end. And if you're familiar with HTML or JavaScript, this is actually fairly easy to do. But if you're a layperson like me, it took me some time to get comfortable with it. But once I did, it's very easy because I know, okay, this code will format my font the exact way that I wanted to do that. So jumping into what happens, or back into what happens, is the form will send that email to the client. It sends it to the program administrator. It sends it to key stakeholders within our organization. And then it sends a calendar invite to the program administrator, the group coordinator, and to any other relevant parties that we need it to go to. Well, what does that look like on the calendar? It's very simple. It looks like this. And so here is the basic calendar invite. And what we do within our organization is we actually use Google Calendar to schedule our student staffing for specific programs. So if I wanted to schedule the facilitators for this event, I would very simply go down to my other calendars, expand that tab, and then select the staffing that I think would be appropriate for this event, show their calendar, and I would make sure that a gap during that time frame fits. If that's the case, I'm going to go ahead and invite them as guests to this event. And our culture within our organization knows that if I invite you within a week ahead of time or 2 weeks ahead of time of an event, then that is a scheduled thing that you need to work. Otherwise, you need to have a conversation with us about why you can't make that. So that's an organizational and cultural thing. Okay, going down here, you can see that our description is automatically updated. It tells me what's included right off the bat, and so just a cursory glance, anyone that's involved with this event from the organizational side can see what's going on with this. But if they wanted to know more information, they could actually go in and check out our progression planner. So they copy and paste that. Or if they're on a mobile device, they could simply open up that link, usually within the app. So that's what's really cool. And again, another cool piece about that is since most people are accessing information from mobile devices these days, especially student staff, they get that calendar invite automatically added to their Google Calendar. They get within that Google Calendar invite, they automatically get this additional information. And so they don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to come up to a physical location and look at a printed out form. They can see it all right here. Excuse me, I apologize. Okay, so you can see that if I'm the group coordinator, I would go in and update this information with more information about the organization, and I would get that information from that organizational form that I showed you about. And then the other thing here is progression. So let's say I, as a group coordinator, know that they want a particular activity. Let's say they wanted to do key punch. Well, I would type in key punch as an activity. Of course, I'm going to update the format. Okay, and then I could add a hyperlink to another document that I have within my Google Drive that lists out the information about that particular activity. We call them activity information sheets. So we have some of this foundational stuff that's already been built within our organization that we can continue to access and build upon and build upon. The great thing about this system is that it's not perfect, but it allows immense collaboration amongst our organization. And so let's say I didn't have this information sheet already built, I can enlist the help of a student staff member to build that that's knowledgeable about that particular activity, and then go back and add this later on. And it's twofold. One, I've got it for this particular event, and two, I have it for future events. They know the template because I've already created the template for them, and they're building content for the program, and therefore I'm getting their ownership of this as well. Okay. So that's built based upon this template. You can see this is what it looks like on the back end. And going back to my first part in this series, you should be familiar with these keys that we have throughout this document. The keywords are replaced with the responses based upon the form that we sent. Okay? You can see here, again, this information is dumped into a spreadsheet. And what's great about this is that, again, I can link this spreadsheet to multiple other spreadsheets. I can query the data. I can use the import range feature, several other things, and I don't have time to cover the benefits of those in this particular tutorial. But if you're unfamiliar with that, I definitely recommend that you check that out. Okay, anyway, so I'll show you the script, and if you want to look at the script of anything on the back end, you would just simply hit Tools, Script Editor, and this is what it would pop up for this particular form. So here I have some general declarations basically that says, hey, this is what the form should do, and then all throughout this brown text says what the code should be doing. So what happens is when the form is submitted, I want to name some variables first. So I name the variables and I tell them what that variable should be. In this case, right here, it's the values or responses of the form. Okay. Next, I'm going to email or choose the emails that I want this to go to. And next, I'm going to take that template that I just showed you, create a copy of it, name the copy like I chose above, and then save it and contain that ID for a future use. Okay. Okay. Now I'm using this document. I'm opening it. I'm replacing the keywords like we talked about, and I am then saving it and closing it. Next, I name some variables to get the email prepared, subject. Then I also, this is just an easier way to do this in my opinion, is if you name some of your hyperlinks as variables instead of having all of this additional kerfluffle down in your actual email body down here. It makes it a little bit cleaner. Okay, so you can see your customer name, thank you very much. And what you're noticing here is you're noticing the headers and some formatting that I've learned along the way that really kind of cleans this up and makes it look like it's a lot more organized. Okay, So you can see here that I've chosen actually to include the URL. And I think the reason why I did this was if for some reason the HTML didn't copy over quite right, at the very least they had access to the link and they could manually copy and paste that into a browser for some reason. But that usually never happens. So this is a good way to do this. Would be to actually just replace this right here, this where it says this link, I would replace it with TBE waiver, and that TBE waiver would then become the hyperlink. I'm sure that's pretty common to most people that are still watching this video at this point. Okay, anyway, I send the email, I use the subject, I use the body, and then I copy the appropriate people that I want to copy. Now here is really the meat and potatoes of the calendar invite that took me forever to learn for some reason. Okay, so I want to title my event. I want to define the start time and the end time of my event, and it needs to be formatted just like this: end date, event date, and start time with a space, with a string space in there, and event date and end time with the space just in there. Okay, and what this variable does is it actually formats it just like I want it to. And then in the comments, or really it's the description of the calendar event, I want this information to be in there. And so that's right, what you were seeing is, hey, you should expect this many participants, and then you should expect to do this type of programming. And if you want more information, check out the progression that we've built for this. Okay. Now, this next code is actually what builds the calendar event and saves it and sends it to the appropriate people. So calendar app.getCalendar by ID. Really what you need to do here is you need to go into your Google Calendar, into the settings, and if you scroll down a little bit, you should look at sharing options, and it should say, this is your calendar ID. Please do not share this with anyone, which is why I've got this generic text right here. So what you would do is you would copy and paste that generic text into your code, and what that would do is that would save it with the appropriate calendar that you want it to save with. Okay. Now, if you're using it within your own domain, let's say Cloud Atlas is a common Google template company. So let's say your company is, or the calendar that you want to use is event calendar, or let's just say team building calendar at cloudatlas.com. So this entire line would need to be updated. However, if it's not that case, if you're using it outside of a domain, then more often than not, you're just going to be replacing this right here. Okay, so we're going to create the event on that calendar. We're going to title it what we want it to be titled up here. We're going to say the date is a start time that we selected up here, the end time that we defined up here, and then the description is going to be the comments variable that we posted right here, the guests that we want to invite to this event, and yes, we want to send the invites. So you can have the option of removing this, and it would not send the invites, but they would still be listed as guests. I don't know why you do that, but you could do that as an option. All right, and so I guess the other important thing that you would have to do here is hit the current project triggers. You would have to add a new trigger and make sure it's on form submit from spreadsheet on form submit, and then you would hit save, and basically another authorization window would pop up and it'd say, hey, select the account that you want to authorize to do this, and then it would review the different things that you're allowing the script to do, and you would authorize that. It's important that you do that. Okay, so if I were to run, another test for doing that is if I hit the run button, um, and you haven't done that current project button quite yet, then it would then remind you, hey, you need to authorize those permissions. But if I hit the run button right here, notice it says cannot read property values from undefined. They're undefined because we haven't submitted a form response quite yet. So when you submit a form response, that will work. If you haven't, then it will not work. Okay, I think that pretty much explains it. I think the other big thing that I should mention is that I'm going to make this information available in the same sample folder as my other folder. But please, for the love of God, make sure that you make a copy of this and you do not try and request access to edit these documents. I will not allow you to do that because then your information would be public to the universe. That's why I'm forcing people to make a copy of this for their own account. And what that does is it removes me and anybody else that would have access to this, and it keeps it only on your side. If you have questions, please feel free to follow up with me, leaving a comment, and I'll try and respond. I apologize for the length. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you guys enjoy. I hope this takes you and your organization to the next step.